We saw that people were looking for us and we were getting those requests and customer support and all that saying, why aren't you on Amazon? And so people are really going to fall in love with your product based off of how you present it to them. And so you really need to give them a nice story to kind of tie into now this multi-million-dollar business that we've sold over $25 million worth of spices. But really it all started with just sitting at a restaurant with some chefs, getting so excited about the spices.
I'm just curious to know, what was like your job prior to owning this business?
So I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I really think that a lot of skills as an entrepreneur are transferable. You know, any business you're thinking about inventory, salaries, pricing, all that stuff. But before I did this, my co-founder and I, after college, I moved to New York and worked in advertising. And my business partner, he was cooking at restaurants, and I was always eating at those restaurants, you know, because he was my buddy, and he would sneak me into the kitchen late at night, you know, and when service was closed, and throw a steak on the grill, and we chow down in the kitchen. But like he and I had an ice cream business in the summer of 2010, where he really he was cooking, he was a pastry chef working at a restaurant, he was really doing it up, and so that kind of gave me my first taste of a food business. But A, I got a ton of cavities from that. Into the summer, my dentist was not happy. But B, it showed me how hard it is. I mean, ice cream takes a long time to make, is not shelf stable, has to be served at the right temperature and all that stuff. So after that whole summer, I took my advertising experience, I took my experience running an ice cream business together with him. And I looked for the next thing, and I ended up meeting some investors that ended up investing in me and a couple other entrepreneurs to get a mortgage business off the ground. That was their area of expertise. That was what they wanted to invest in. And so we started figuring it out, and I ran a mortgage company that was a way better way to get a mortgage. We were kind of a super broker. We kind of were unbiased around who you get your loan with and had this huge tech stack behind us. But we raised $32 million over 4 years and really put it all into building a big tech team. We had over 100 employees. We really built this business up in a big way. And we had a signed term sheet for a Series C for $40 million. And the private equity investors were just trying to tie us up until we ran out of business, hoping to buy us out of bankruptcy for pennies on the dollar. So we ended up cutting the team back, all that stuff, and then finding somebody to buy the business that would keep it alive. But we didn't we sold it for less than what we had raised. But still, we took it as far as we could for 4 years. But I learned a lot. That was my university on how to run a business. And one of the biggest things that I decided is that I do not want to raise venture capital. And so that's when my business partner came back in. He was a chef. He became an aid worker. He came back from Afghanistan where he was working and had this wild cumin that his chef friends were going crazy over. But in the meantime, he'd already met a cooperative, an organic spice cooperative in Zanzibar. He'd already met a vertically integrated cardamom farmer in Guatemala. And I watched him pull all these spices out of his bag at a restaurant, and just the chefs lose their minds. And so kind of he came from this like culinary and aid work background, and I came from this like entrepreneurship business background. And together I saw how excited the chefs were really getting around these spices. And it was super clear to me that there was a business, not just with chefs, but with home cooks too. And thank God it wasn't frozen like ice cream, you know? We had a shelf stable business idea, and that in the world of food made me really happy.
Wow, that's so cool. So it was a perfect mix, your entrepreneurial background and his spices that he brought in that brought a lot of excitement to a lot of chefs. Like that's how you like, okay, we're gonna make this into a product.
Yeah, and chefs that have access to the best ingredients in the world. You know, you go to high-end restaurants, they know the cattle rancher, they know their cheesemonger, they know the farmer that grew their lettuce, but spices were still this like totally, like blank slate. Like they just like, no, all of like turmeric is turmeric, chili flakes are chili flakes, garlic powder is garlic powder. And all of a sudden they got handed these spices by a guy opening his backpack would be like, try this garlic powder, and just had their like, you could watch their brains being expanded into what could be. And then if chefs don't have access to it, then we know that home cooks were definitely cooking with worse stuff.
I love it. Did you decide to like do any like research before launching the product? Like, did you want to go see like, are people looking for these kind of spices? Did you do any like keyword research or any type of market research? before deciding to launch the business?
We now have like a really good story on why the business worked. Because people were looking for single origin coffee and tea and chocolate, and people were going to farmers markets, and single origin was already a word that was associated with quality in people's minds. Just nobody had been able to pull this global supply chain together around spices. And we really did it as a social enterprise to do this. In the moment, we had no idea. My co-founder had his living room full of spices. His wife had moved to California for 3 months. I flew in the next day. We got shelving at IKEA. We unloaded bags. We created a packing and shipping area. No, this was really like kind of a pull-based business. Like this was the only. I've now started a bunch of different businesses over the past 2 decades, and this was the first business that really had product market fit from the beginning. And what I mean by that is that we started selling to chefs, and he would just go door to door, and we sold to
Oh,
chefs. And then because of that, chefs told their other chef buddies, and we had more chefs all around New York City just buying and using our spices. And then I built our site, wondering if we could get anybody to buy. And then we started getting PR because the chefs were talking to the journalists, or the journalists wanted to know who uses our spices. We told them, look at all these great chefs around New York City. And they said, I have to write about this. And all of a sudden, customers started coming in. And so for us, like I can tell you a whole story about why we were in the right place at the right time, but it really felt like such an evolutionary thing where we started door to chefs. They really liked it. That let us get PR and journalists to write about us. That brought in some home cooks. And also, as we started getting more and more PR, it made sense for us to be on Amazon because we saw that people were looking for us and we were getting those requests and customer support and all that saying, why aren't you on Amazon? And so really, I can tell you a whole story about all the reasons why the business is, now this multi-million-dollar business that we've sold over $25 million worth of spices over the past 7+ years. But really, it all started with just sitting at a restaurant with some chefs getting so excited about the spices that my buddy was pulling out of his backpack.
wow, I love that. So you guys were actually going door to door and getting firsthand feedback from your customers, and you were seeing like people are loving this. So you're like,
Yeah.
there's something here, you know?
Yeah, we found the opportunity in the old school way, in the offline way, like of just like saying like, how many businesses, especially in food, you see this, somebody bakes incredible cookies, all their friends are like, you should sell this. And they're like, okay. And they give it a try. I think the biggest difference is that instead of us going straight into farmers markets or all that, we started saying, okay, we have these spices, we can pack them and ship them all across the country. And so that's where we really started. We turned our pockets inside out. We put every penny that we had into the business. And we just tried to see what we could make work. And then all of a sudden, our customers came in and said, we love this cumin from Afghanistan. And we love this cardamom from Guatemala. But what about chili flakes? What about lime? What about, all these things? And we started going all around the whole, like, what about, I want better bay leaves. And so they kind of gave us their permission saying, if you bring these other spices in, then we'll buy those from you too. And so we started building more and more and more, building a whole lineup. And the more we added, the better the economics of the business got. Because as we added more spices, we saw customers more often. We saw higher average cart sizes. And we
Mm,
were able to be like, oh, you like this? Well, we can actually supply all of your spice needs all from one place instead of only supplying a small subset from them. So that's how the business really grew organically, brick by brick. And by year 3, we were able to pay ourselves minimum wage. And that felt great.
wow. I love that because one of the things that we talk about constantly is creating a crowd around our product before we launch it. And you obviously nowadays it's done mostly through social media, through the internet. Door to door is very minimal nowadays. And if you don't mind me asking, what year was this, when you guys were
So
going
we
restaurant
started
to
really
restaurant?
a lot of the R&D for the company was in 2016, but really our e-commerce, like the pedal hit the metal in 2017. And what we really saw is that we had a good first year. Our first year was in the low 6 figures, which was really unexpected for how deeply unsophisticated our whole operation was.
Yeah.
And we were packing and shipping out of my co-founder's apartment. Like it was really simple, but clearly people were really excited about it. And we kind of grew 2017, 2018, 2019. And then we were really close to we started our e-commerce started picking up. And one of the big things that we kind of learned about that early growth was all about that, like we didn't have budgets for paid ads in the early days. But what we could do is pitch journalists and PR. And it turned out that nobody knew what cinnamon was. Like cinnamon is tree bark. Nobody saw peppercorns are the fruit of a climbing vine that grow in bunches like grapes
Mm.
do. And so we started with PR, and then all of a sudden PR opened the door to affiliate because our site converted well, because of our even basic Amazon setup at that point really converted well. All of a sudden we were getting listed on affiliate, which, we were doing a 10% revenue share for like, people like Epicurious or Food and Wine that were writing best gifts for dad, best gifts for foodies, best holiday gifts, best gifts for mom, and all this other stuff. Even like my favorite pantry things that I discovered this month, like we just
Mhm.
kept getting included in more and more of those lists because we had a new and unique product that was beloved by chefs, that was beloved by our customers, and we had an e-commerce operation that like converted well because we were really paying attention on listening to our customers, getting feedback, adding more spices they were asking for, and just really building this kind of brick by brick. And we had
Mm.
this whole plan going on. And then the pandemic hit in 2020. And
Wow.
so we really thought that we might be out of business because, global supply chain disruptions. But it turns out that we had a meaningful strength because we are a global supply chain company. And so we were able to really keep all of our supply chains running and bring in spices and all that. And all of a sudden, our food service, our chefs, where we started the business, that went from 50% of our revenue to 0% of our revenue. And we were like, oh no, we're going to be
Mm.
out of business. And then by May of 2020, e-commerce picked up so much that it had replaced everything that we'd lost from food service. And by the end of the year, our business grew 5x. And that was our first $1 million plus year. And
Wow.
so
That's
that was a
amazing.
really big deal. So we grew a lot, but that really also made us want to pay a lot more attention to Amazon because all of a sudden Amazon, went from being this like just kind of quiet channel on the side that was sitting there and gathering reviews. We wanted
Mm.
to turn it into something that actually could work for the business.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, did you have any advice or prior knowledge to like PR, or is this something that you were discovering as you were going? How did you land on like doing PR? Is this something that you noticed and you're like, oh, let me like fuel up on that, see where it can take us? Or was there someone who's like giving you advice, like, oh, focus on this avenue
Yeah.
to
We
promote the product?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we had a lot of mentors along the way. When we had our ice cream business in 2010, we were able to get so much fun PR. But we were just doing crazy ice cream flavors and all kinds of frozen brulee bananas and crazy ingredients. We had an ice cream that had duck in it. Like we had all these like things, and we just saw like the press just ate it up, and people just kept writing about must see things to do in New York this weekend. This is what you have to check out. Try this flavor, try that flavor. And so we were able to really see the impact of PR on our first business. And we saw that if we can tell interesting stories about food, every street has ice cream that you can buy in New York City. Every street corner has at least one store where you can get ice cream. And so like, how do we tell an interesting story? So we really got to practice at that. And one of the good tools, there's a tool online called Haro, Help a Reporter Out, where reporters post their queries. Should they need anything that they're missing? No, but just reporters write anywhere where they need a source or they need a story, and it's a really like low hit rate, but you get into this like rapid fire PR response. So like there's like 5 topics that the reporters are asking about that you can answer, and you just got to churn out an answer. And so that was a really good like kind of practice. I felt like going to the gym of like, how quickly can I write an interesting story as a response to this journalist? And very few has actually landed, but then really we got a lot better at PR and building relationships with a lot of other journalists and setting Google alerts for anytime anyone wrote about spices. So we had this whole kind of approach, but we definitely had a lot of mentors and we had a lot of support and PR professionals that kind of saw us with our dinky little company. And I think this is one of the advantages that I think early stage entrepreneurs have is like you have a dream and like you can talk to anybody and be like, hey, I'm trying to get this thing off the ground. Would you mind talking to me for a little bit? And we found that a lot of people were really willing to talk to us and kind of share some of their secrets.
I love it. So, tell me, how did you come up with the brand name for Burlap and Barrel?
Yeah, so my family we're immigrants. We moved here from Israel, and my mom cannot say too many R's. It's not a foreigner friendly name. We learned over time, but what we wanted to do is we were kind of considering a lot of different names around how do we talk about being your guide, how do we talk about being your Sherpa, like what can we talk about leading people through the world, and being like, look, this is we're a social enterprise. We kind of give a lot more money back to the farmers. We set them up financially in a way better arrangement than they would through the commodity market. And so we were thinking a lot about that. And then we had at some point the light bulb idea where spices traveled all around the world in wooden barrels and in burlap sacks. And so we're like,
Mm.
okay, let's give a nod to the traditional, spice, supply chain. And so we said, let's call ourselves Burlap and Barrel. It's no longer burlap sacks, it's polywoven sacks. But we also made this barrel icon. And if you look closely at our icon on our products, you can see that it kind of looks like hands holding hands, kind of all coming together into the center to form this barrel. And so we wanted to do something that really felt connected back to bringing people together from all over the world. We're a social enterprise, so our goal is to connect smallholder farmers to high value markets, but really it's about just putting a lot more money in the smallholder farmers' pockets. And because of that, we get way better spices from these really expert farmers. And then we work with them instead of just selling to the commodity market. They're instead cleaning, grinding, drying, and preparing the spices for export. They make a lot more money, and we get really incredible spices directly from smallholder farmers. So the logo kind of represents the way spices traveled with the name of the company, and also these hands kind of coming together to build these global supply chains around spices.
I love that. That is so original and very creative. And it's like that's how a lot of big brands come. They have such original names and iconic relation to the product itself. Talk to me about the suppliers. So you said your partner came from overseas, and so most of your suppliers are globally. Are they coming from
Yeah,
other countries?
yeah, and that's really what initially happened. Is my co-founder, he had gotten his master's in international development, worked as an aid worker in Afghanistan, and in a handful of other places around the world. But I mean, through this, I mean, he learned how to go into places where normally, are off the tourist beaten path, but how to really like work with local business owners and how to work with farmers all over the world. And so, really, what ended up happening is we ended up starting with this cumin that he brought from a group of foragers in northern Afghanistan. That was our first spice, this wild cumin. And really, we saw people get so excited about it, especially chefs that cooked with it. And so then he started reaching out to his network. And through Heifer International, they introduced us to a vertically integrated cardamom farmer in Guatemala who's a real personality and really wanted to change the way cardamom was handled and grown. There's no vertical integration is not a thing that exists much in the spice world. It by default is set up to be separate. And then also through another company, he ended up meeting an organic cooperative of spice farmers in Zanzibar, in eastern Tanzania, the Spice Islands, as they're known, that are famous for their cloves. They're really like these little, small, super high oil content, super flavorful, fragrant cloves, nutmeg. We bring this exceptional award-winning black pepper from there because the soil is too sandy and it's too windy. And so we get these small, really intense peppercorns. And so we started with a small set of spices, 8 to 10 different spices. And all of a sudden people were like, great, what else? Like, what else can you get me? And so we met this organic cooperative in Vietnam that grows garlic powder and shallot powder and onion powder and star anise and ginger and all these other wonderful things. We added saffron farmers in Afghanistan. We
Wow.
slowly, piece by piece added each of these folks. And we can't just we have this still a big list of spices and farmers, but really we can only do this when we can kind of build the supply chain in the right way.
How many spices do you have now in total?
We have about 100 different spices. So we have a lot of spice blends, some of which
Wow.
we make, some of which our farmers make at origin. So we have the only herbs de Provence from Provence, and then we have a lot of single spices from all over the world, and we keep adding. We can't help ourselves, but we want to add more. And now we're working on reintroducing a whole line of single origin sugars because nobody knows where the sugars come from, especially and also single origin honeys, which is a particularly also hard to track product that usually this is true for spices and sugar and honey. There's so much other stuff put into those products that I
Mm.
think people really have a hard time, and rightfully so, trusting the local spices and that they get from their grocery store. There's all anti-caking agents, there's fillers, there's all kinds of other stuff. And oftentimes the spices at your grocery store are a mix of what thousands of farmers grew. It's all been mixed and mixed and mixed. Maybe it's from this year, but it's probably from last year or even more likely the year before that. And so what we're really finding that we're standing for is around quality, and
Mm.
that people really trust us to bring them a really incredible, delicious spice that will really make it'll really help make them like a superstar chef, in their own homes. And so we really started to build that, but we have a lot more that we want to do. But really, Amazon is where we like have like the tip of the iceberg, where you can kind of get to know a handful of our best selling spices, where we have the best margins on it. And then it kind of works in tandem with our e-commerce site, because our e-commerce site is where we have the full list. We have spices that we lose money on when we sell them. Just it was so cool, we had to bring it onto the site. And we have a really broad variety, because our site is a little bit better at breadth. So if you come in and pick one or two spices, we can kind of get you to end up with 6 or 7 spices to get free shipping, and to kind of find just other stuff that you probably need. But Amazon is really good at the like one-off, like, oh, you need a jar of garlic, you need a jar of cumin, here you go. And so we found that like each channel has its own expertise. And so we're kind of operating in this almost channel agnostic, where we're really happy that Amazon can be a good part of our total revenue, but it also doesn't necessarily serve all of our customers. So we have this kind of relationship with all the different channels that we sell, and we're happy wherever you find our spices. We're trying to make it work and accessible anywhere where you want to buy your spices.
You have a lot of products. We're going to focus on the product that we're going to talk about today, which you launched in February. And
That's right.
which product is that?
So that's our purple shallot powder, and these are kind of air dried shallots from central Vietnam that are really just an incredible flavor booster for anything that you're cooking. But it's been a relatively new product for us, and it's done really, really well for us. And we kind of wanted to try it out, see how it would do on Amazon, even if we didn't, throw a ton of support behind it, to see how it would fare. And so we can dive into that.
Yeah, I would love that. So can you tell me, like, how did you find the supplier for that? And how did you choose? You're like, okay, this is going to be our supplier. Did you go through multiple farmers, or
Yeah,
I'm just
finding good
interested
versions
to
of
know.
basic spices is super hard. Like, I think because like if we have a really specialty spice, no one's ever tasted it before, and it's an excellent version of that spice. But when we knew that people have so much bias against garlic powder and onion powder, and no one even has thought of shallot powder, and so we wanted to find something that when you open it and smell it, it blows you away right away. Like, you just know that this is a really special version of it. And a few years ago, we had started working with a social enterprise out of Vietnam called DACE. And so these folks really help primarily women farmers build up their whole kind of like business, whether sometimes they help with seedlings, sometimes they'll build electricity, water, all that in some pretty rural areas where a lot of the farming ends up happening in Vietnam. And so for us, we met these farmers. I believe the founder had reached out to us. I think one of the nice benefits is that initially we were really tracking down farmers. We were reading press articles. We were talking to friends. We were talking to nonprofits, NGOs, and all that, all these people that operated in different countries. And then we'd like organize a trip. And on this first trip, we spent 3 weeks in Vietnam traveling around, trying to meet all these different farmers. And 90% of farmers aren't a good fit. They're producing at some kind of big scale. They're not treating their workers well. It's not like it's not, they're not trying to do, they're really selling to the commodity market, which has really been the only game in town for most spices. And then we met the folks behind DACE, and they work with farmers all across Vietnam, and including this really wonderful group of farmers that specializes in alliums, in garlic, onion, shallot in central Vietnam, an area famous for growing it. And so we got to try it, and we were just blown away by it. We loved it. They so carefully grow these really big, intense kind of versions of the onion, garlic, and shallot. Then they slice them, and kind of take them through this kind of heated air, really delicate drying process that creates these really crispy, kind of clean, intense shallots, and then they get ground into a powder. And so we try a lot of different things, but when we got to smell and taste this, we were like, oh my God, we never have shallots at home. Like I always wish I have shallots every time the recipe calls for it. And this powdered shallot is like the best version of an onion and garlic together that I could imagine. So we knew that this one would be a winner. And so right away we were like, okay, when can we get our first shipment?
I love that. That's so cool. So you actually went there in person and you met with them, and you're like, this is the one that we're gonna go with.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, as they think about businesses, they think about contracts and all that. And our business is fully run on relationships. We're not going to create a contract with a farmer in rural Vietnam. And then what happens? They don't fulfill it. And like, then what? Are we going to take them to court? Like, it doesn't make sense. Really, all of our business is built on really strong relationships, where we're hopefully the customers, like the best customer for this farmer. We plan better. We do big down payments, 50% down before. But really, in the early days, we would fly to the spices. I initially, my co-founder was doing these trips by himself. He invited me to join. I thought it was so that I could see it, but I think it was more so for my checked baggage space, because we would go out there, we would buy the spices, we would then check them under the plane with us, and that was how we would import. We called it suitcase importing. And so early on, in order for a farmer to trust you and to know that you're good for it and that you're worthwhile to work with and to build a business relationship with, we showed up at the farm. We spent time with them. We slept on the
Mm.
farm, and then before we left, we had them pack as much of the spices that we wanted as we could carry, and we would check it as under the plane. And we got so many looks, at airport security. But that's how we brought it in, and that's how we built these initial relationships. And we went from in year one being these farmers' smallest customer to being now in our 8th year being their largest customers. And so it's been a really fun transformation that the farmers have believed in us and were willing to see these two guys that came in from America asking about spices, that kind of ended up paying off for them. And it definitely ended up paying off for us. But that's how we started. We started with spices in suitcases because it was cheaper than hiring a freight forwarder. And it was really helpful to be there. But now we're working in larger quantities and pallets and containers and all that sort of spices. So we've professionalized our operation pretty significantly.
And did you order samples prior to flying out there? Did you get like to try it before, or did you go there?
Yeah. Now we try to be a little more organized and order samples. It's actually a really good test to see if the farmer can handle exporting themselves, because most farmers just sell to the commodity market. It's just somebody comes through town with a pickup truck with a megaphone announcing the price, and they just load it up onto the truck. We're asking farmers to do more, but we're also paying a lot more for it. So we're asking them to clean and dry and pack and prepare for export. And so if a farmer can't get us samples to the US, then it's not a great sign. They'll be able to kind of do this different way of doing this. So often we will ask for samples first. We'll ask for lots of different samples, and we'll ask a million questions about why do you do it this way? Why that way? When is the best time to harvest? What about your irrigation? We just ask a million questions, and it becomes clear pretty quickly who are the farmers that just really love it, that do it well, that this is really an art for them,
Mm.
that this is really a deep, deep expertise, versus the farmers that are like, it doesn't matter. I just throw it in the ground and I come back 3 months later and pick it
Yeah.
up. And so that it really all helps us. So it's good to have samples, but for reasons more than just trying the spice.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you touched on a very good point. That is, you ask a million questions before you move forward because you want to make sure this is the person you want to build a business relationship with. And we talk about that a lot in choosing the right supplier. And if you don't mind me asking, how much did it cost you to order those samples?
So normally the samples end up costing between like $40 and $80. It's really
Okay.
not that expensive. Typically, they'll give us the spices as a sample for free, but then it's all about sending them internationally, which we usually do through DHL. So it's almost all the shipping costs, which we're
Yeah.
more than happy to cover. But it's really important that they can arrange it because we're about to do international business with them, and so that's how we approach it.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so you ordered your samples and you're happy with that. I want to talk a little bit about like designing your packaging and packaging your product. How much did it cost you to design your product, the package and the logo and all of that?
Yeah, we all started calling in whatever favors we could, because when we started all the business, we didn't have money for salaries, we didn't have money for anything, and then every time we put in some money into the business, and every time we're like, do we want to pay ourselves or do we want to buy more spices so the business can keep growing? And every time we chose to just keep putting money back into the business and buying more spices. And it took us until our 3rd year before we were able to pay ourselves minimum wage. And so we did. So everything we did, including the packaging design, was really on the cheap. And so
Right.
our logo designer and first packaging designer was my co-founder's cousin. And so she was, it was a family project. It was a family deal. She kind of helped us. We paid her what we could, but it was really, really, being done as a favor to us to kind of get things going. And honestly, one of the big lessons that we learned is that when we were starting out, we would pack all of our spices into these pouches, like just these like, kind of paper pouches that have like the little zipper on the top. And that was just because that's what we could afford. We couldn't afford like glass jars and all that. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs try to pretend like they're a bigger company than they are. But my co-founder would handwrite the name of the spice and the weight and everything on the bags and the pouches. And all of a sudden our customers would be like, oh my God, I get this handmade, like hands packed by the owners of the company thing in
Mm.
my home. So we really leaned into, like, we couldn't afford to do it like, at a larger scale. So we leaned into the fact that everything was being done at a small scale. So we spent a few $100s on the initial design. We didn't hire some fancy design agency or anything like that. We worked with my co-founder's cousin, and then we just bought some materials, and these paper pouches were the cheapest things that we could do. So we started there and bought a few hundred paper pouches and started filling them. And then as we kept going, I mean, I think you know this, but like the startup costs, going from 0 to 1 is the hardest. Going from no label to label, and then everything else is tweaking. So we kept
Yeah.
making it a little bit better. We were like, oh wait, we need barcodes on these. So we put barcodes on there. And we're like, oh wait, our logo could be a little bit bigger. So we did that. Like, so we
Yeah.
just kept tweaking. People want to read the story of the spice and how to cook with it. Okay, let's add a couple paragraphs. So everything ended up being this iterative process that got better and better over time. But man, we've come a really long way from how we were packing in our first year to how we pack now.
Yeah. Where'd you get your barcodes from? Did you use like GS1 or?
That was one of the first pieces of advice that we got, was do not rent barcodes. Do not buy repurposed barcodes. You're going to pay
Yeah.
the price for it later. And so
Yeah.
we went to GS1, and first we bought 100 barcodes, and then we bought 1,000 barcodes, and then we bought 10,000 barcodes. Like, we just kept, like, we tried to keep our spend as low as possible, but we've heard so many horror stories for companies that either ran out of barcodes or repurposed a barcode, or even reused a barcode that used to be something and is now something different. And so we were just like, nope, this seems like an area to invest in. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges as an early stage entrepreneur. Your resources are so limited. How do you choose like 2 or 3 things that you can invest in? And how do you kind of save money everywhere else? And so we saved money on packaging, and we saved money on ourselves and our salaries, but we really paid money to the spice farmers, and we made sure that we could get legit barcodes and build our site well and do all that stuff. But we really did everything ourselves that we could in the early years.
Yeah, no, and that's really smart when it comes to starting up your business. If you can save on resources and use and ask people that that can help you with design or website development, you can save a lot of money this way. And did you initiate an LLC for the business initially? Did you do it?
We started it as an LLC, and when we kind of we're a social enterprise, and we were like, how do we tie our business practices to our social values? And so about 2 years into the company, we learned about a new structure called a public benefit corporation, which is different than an LLC. We reincorporated it as a kind of corporation rather than an LLC. But this public benefit corporation means that every for-profit business has a fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value. You got to make money for the owners. That's your legal responsibility. A public benefit corporation allows a second and equally important public benefit, and that's us for the farmers. And so we were able to actually write into the structure of our company really this connection back to social impact and back to farmers, that we now have a legal responsibility to uphold and promote. And so we started as an LLC because it was cheap and it was fast and it was easy and uncomplicated. And again, you'll see a theme here of everything is iterative. Everything is like, evolves. And so 2 years in, we found a lawyer that specialized in social enterprises who really helped us reincorporate our company and switch over from an LLC to a public benefit corporation.
Oh, cool. And initially, who did you use to do the LLC? Did you do it yourself, or did you hire
Yeah.
an agency? You did it
Yeah,
yourself?
we did it ourselves. It was, we went to one of those .com websites. That was like a good enough thing. And you can always like get into trouble if you do this and like never think about it again and whatever. But we kept an eye on it, and we always knew that, like, I think when I had my venture back company, we always did everything to the max because we had investor money and we were trying to build for scale. And I learned that was really a mistake, because what we ended up doing is we ended up spending way too much money on stuff, and much of it we never needed it, or we outgrew it. And so when you're young, we wanted to maximize for flexibility and for low cost, knowing that when we make a little bit more money, reincorporating our company won't be a big deal. But right now, doing a proper social enterprise documentation, everything would have been more expensive and would have been a little bit harder for us to pull off.
So that's cool. So you got your business entity and like the foundation, right? You got your UPC codes, you got your samples. What is your first inventory order? Like, how much did you order from that supplier?
Yeah, so when we came in early days, we would be, I think you can check, what is it? two 15 or 20 kilogram bags under the airplane with you. And so we'd literally go there and we go to the farmers and be like, I want you to weigh out the maximum baggage allowance, put it in a bag. We then throw it in a suitcase and bring it back with us. And then we'd sell through that. And then when we would sell through that, that would give us money to place the next order. Or when we were like 2/3 of the way sold out, we could place the next order. And then we started kind of putting that, we would ship it in by airplane because we couldn't, like, we weren't sending enough to ship by ocean. But when we started
Oh,
bringing the shallot powder, which was kind of late last year, what ended up happening is that we've been a bigger business, and so we were able to already, instead of ordering 20 kilograms and putting it in a suitcase, we were able to order 200 kilograms. And so, we were able to place a bigger initial order because we were like, we think this is going to do well. And our spices, because they're so close to harvest. So that's the next thing for us also. And I think if you're in a food world, we have to figure out what's the seasonality. When do you harvest the shallots? When do you dry the shallots? And so we wanted to wait until peak season, right when they were ready, to place our next order. And so we ended up ordering a few hundred kilograms of it at that point, which is, for the US pound people, just multiply it by 2, you get more or less there. But that's what we were doing. And so we brought in a few hundred kilograms to begin with because we thought that people would get really excited about it. And we already had heard from our customers that they loved onion and garlic and they loved cooking with shallots. And we had a pretty good idea that this would already sell to our existing customer base, let alone the new customers that would really love it.
yeah. And how much did that roughly cost you, the 200 kilograms?
So our spices, let's see. Let's do some math in my head, / on the computer that has a calculator. So maybe 200 kilograms maybe cost us like $1,500 or something like that at origin, something like that, which is still 3 to 5 times what farmers would make from the commodity market. And then we would put it on a boat, which adds another $2 to $3 per kilogram. And so again, another
900 or $600.
Yeah, exactly. And so think about that. So now we're spending a few $1,000s to kind of test out if people will like our purple shallot powder. And then on the other end of it, we had to buy jars and labels and lids and all that stuff. And so, when we started, we were spending maybe $1.50 or something for a jar, label, lid. And now we've gotten it down to closer to like 80 cents, maybe 70 cents even, because instead of buying from local packaging resellers in the US, we now buy our jars from a glass factory in Taiwan. And so like what we've done, I think early on, our margins were super tight because we were paying a lot for inefficiency. And no customer wants to buy your stuff for really expensive because you're inefficient. They want to buy your stuff for a premium because the ingredients are great, because the labor is really special, how it's made, how it's built. And so we really lived in the first few years at really thin margins, knowing that if we could keep growing, we'd be able to scale up, and all of a sudden the jars would cost less, and all of a sudden the labels would cost less, and all of a sudden we'd go from paying $15 a kilogram for air freight down to $2 to $3 a kilogram for ocean freight. And so that's how we kind of built our way into it. But we're still talking about like if a small order would be 20 to 30 kilograms, for spending a few $100s to bring in a new spice. Now we're spending a few $1,000s to bring in a new spice. And so now, out of 2,000 kilograms, let's see if we can do this, 2,000 kilograms to ounces.
Is it 2,000 kilograms or 200?
Sorry, 200 kilograms to ounces is around 7,000 ounces. And we have about 2 ounces in a jar. So now we're at that makes us about 3,500 jars. So like all this, I think a lot of people buy the finished goods. We have to buy the raw materials and then transport it and bring it in. And so that 200 kilograms was enough for about 3,500 jars. And that was enough for us to have it. We knew we had a good customer. We could sell and send out a newsletter on our site to all the people that have subscribed. And then we could also put it on Amazon and kind of see what the response was for that.
And how much did it cost you to put it together? Did you do it in-house or to fill up the jars and everything?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we budget right now about $1.50-ish for jar, label, lid, and the labor for packing the jar of spices. And so early on, we were doing it at home. There's a cottage industry law in the US around some foods where you can actually have a home food business, and it's allowed, but you quickly outgrow that. And so we found a co-packer. And so we found people that like, instead of us doing it ourselves, which we don't have, like this machinery is so expensive, these like fillers and labeling machines and all that stuff. You can spend millions of dollars just on equipment alone. And so it didn't make sense for us. So we found a great company. Initially, we started with another spice company that had a little bit of room on their line. They weren't packing all the time. So they would take us in and pack our spices for us. But eventually we moved to another company that really built it all up for us and kind of was able to work with us to kind of build a second business for them while they normally process fresh vegetables. Anyway, this is talking about partners. So important because we really rely on our co-packers to be able to test quality, to do a great job and all that. So anyways, all that coming together, the jar, the label, the lid at our scale probably started at $3 a unit. And now we got it to about $1.50 a unit for
Oh,
all the
nice.
labor and packaging and materials down to do that.
Nice. So $1.50 times 3,500 would be what you would be looking at to
Yeah,
package this
which is
whole
around
thing.
$5,000 to package all of them. So now
Nice.
we're getting in like the $10,000 range to go from like spices on the farm in Vietnam to kind of finished goods domestically in the US, labeled and ready to ship.
Nice. And how much does it cost then to ship it to the Amazon warehouse?
So this would just be a couple $100. It's pretty easy we would palletize everything. Our warehouse would do that, but we put all of our spices in these single unit boxes that we bought. And so those do cost like around 25 cents per, but we got these single unit boxes and then we put a sticker on with the Amazon label. That's just a few pennies. And then all those go into master cases. And so those go into cases, the cases go into master cases. And so we have these boxes that hold about, I think it's 144 jars. Those get loaded onto pallets and then wrapped with saran wrap. And then we'll spend a few $100s. Amazon makes it relatively easy because we ship out of Pennsylvania and there's an Amazon warehouse not too far away. They tell us which one to ship into. So it's not a very long trip. So we'll put it on a pallet, ship it into the Amazon warehouse, and then they kind of take it from there.
Yeah, that's very efficient to just get it shipped to Amazon, and we can talk about that. But it's something that we focus on, like how to be more efficient when you ship to Amazon. And the last thing that I wanted to ask about photos, when you do the graphic design photos for your Amazon detail page, do you hire a graphic designer, a photographer to do that? And how much does that cost you to do that?
Yeah,
Maybe just for this specific product.
Yeah, for the specific product, I think we spent $200 or $300. I mean, we have professional photographers that we pay them. Maybe let's say for this product, maybe it was like $300 to $500 for professional product shots, and then we handed those over to an Amazon specialist who then made all the very specific images for another around $300 to kind of make all the different assets. Because I think one of the biggest challenges is when people don't know who you are, they don't know your brand, they need to trust you. And I think that like poor photography is one of the first thing that sends people off your page. If they see it, it looks like it wasn't photographed well. It doesn't look right. They can't tell the details. They can't see it from all the sides. I think people have enough reasons not to trust, a new supplier they've never heard of. So I really think that most of the job of our Amazon pages and of our website is really around building trust really quickly. And you can do that through reviews, but you don't get to start there. You can do that through really well written and thoughtful product descriptions, which you can do, and it's kind of free. You can do it through good photography. And so I think that photography is definitely one of the most expensive things of getting a new product set up. But I find that without it, we can't find ways to kind of cut corners on it. I think that it's really, really important to somebody giving you a chance on your product, especially your product. If you're an entrepreneur, your product probably isn't the cheapest. If people don't know who you are, and so like you really need to win somebody's heart and mind over. So we really try to build robust product pages full of recipes and tasting notes and flavor suggestions and like all of this other stuff and where it came from and how it was grown and who the farmers are and how you compare it and all that. And so we just really try to give you as much information as possible and who we are and why should you care about the work that we're doing as a company and what does it mean to be buying single origin spices. We're really trying to tell that whole story in a thoughtful way. So the photography is the most expensive part of it. The rest of it is kind of our time to kind of write all this stuff out and do some storytelling, because people are really going to fall in love with your product based off of how you present it to them. And so you really need to give them a nice story to kind of tie into. And then they get to experience it and say, wait, did this product live up to my expectations? And it has to, otherwise you're never going to get repeat business. And it's going to be very hard to build a business without repeat business. But for us, if you first have to win their hearts, with the story that you tell them about what makes your product so special, and then they get to cook with it, and then they really fall in love with it, and then they become regulars, and then you're off to the races with your business.
Yeah, that's really important, and I agree 100%. That's really good, and I know we're running out of time. Maybe we can thank you for all that information. I would like to jump into the sales numbers of when you launched, and we can kind of end it there.
Yeah.
So it comes up to the startup cost for the product about $3.30. Amazon fees about $1.94. The Amazon FBA fee is $4.08. So now is the exciting part. So you guys launched in February of this year for this product. Tell me about the revenue numbers, number of units sold, month one.
So when we started initially, what we had realized, we just kind of did this as a standalone listing. And we sold 34 jars in the first month for $442. And so we got started. We didn't know if there'd be any demand for this or anything else like that. And then that's where we really started. What we started doing then is, over the next few months, we did a couple things. We started playing around with the prices to help us kind of with margin. And we've been increasing the price slowly to see what the market would bear. And then two is, we actually tied the purple shallot powder, into an Amazon listing with all of our other spices on Amazon. And so it helped for like kind of natural product discovery, because we're still pretty tight on advertising and budget. And so we've really been keeping our budget to a minimum. We've been putting most of our paid acquisition against spices that are already selling well, and some of our gift sets on there. And Amazon, like every other channel for us, has to be profitable, because we're a bootstrapped company. We don't have outside investment, so we have to be profitable. And so we don't have this ability to just spend tons and tons of money on advertising trying to build a market. So really, a lot of the story of our business is about organic growth. And so the second month, we actually took the price way down just to see what would happen. And we sold 75 units at $611, still more than doubled our units, and almost doubled our revenue. And then as we went through there, I'll just kind of tell you that now, all the way through July, which we're talking now at the end of, we sold over 400 units of our purple shallot powder. The last 3 months have all been over $1,000 a month. We've done over $5,000 in revenue from it. And now, with very little support and very little effort, we've now kind of moved through a few hundred units on Amazon. We're now having regular sales. We don't have to spend a ton of time promoting it. And so part of our strategy on Amazon too is like, great, now if we get 10 spices like this, then all of a sudden we're doing $10,000 a month. And so like, we're kind of building this in an organic and really careful way. I think a lot of people do this with meaningful paid ads behind it, and bless them. Definitely ads can accelerate you, but we've been really just trying to add spices into Amazon and into our whole lineup that just people want. And there's this natural product market fit that people are going to start kind of discovering them, trying them out, and coming back regularly. So that's really our slow and steady approach. It hasn't been live for that long, but we're getting really close to breaking 100 units a month on a regular, and we're already breaking $1,000 a month on the regular. So we're just going to keep this going. And as we hit the holidays, which our business is very seasonal, I am expecting this purple shallot to maybe be like 200 to 250 units a month, because there's just so much more food activity happening on Amazon. So we're just slowly building towards all this stuff. And I'm a very big advocate of slow and steady winning the race in the world of startups. So that's our story.
I love it. Congratulations on all the success. That's amazing. And I would love to invite you after year end to kind of see the overall picture of the whole year. That would be really cool to kind of see how it all comes together. But Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, I love that. That was an awesome story. Thank you for coming here and sharing it. Congratulations on all the success. I'm eager to try your spices myself. I love to cook.
Yeah, send me your address.
I love to cook, and I feel like I'm eager now to like try them and see how good they taste with the food.
Yeah, I would love it. Yeah, send me your address, and if there's any particular spices that you want to try, let me know, and I'll get a little care package your way.
Cool. I appreciate it. I wanna close this interview with like one last thing, and that is, what are three costly mistakes that you have done within this business that, looking back, you wish you've done it differently, or that something that you can learn from and other sellers can learn from?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So one is buying too much product. I think that we all like get like dollar signs in our eyes when we see efficiencies. We're like, oh, if I buy triple what I really need, then my shipping is going to go down to like by half. And I've been guilty of it. And more often than not, we end up having way too much product on hand. And so, A, your cash is tied up in all this product that you're not selling. B, you run the risk of having to dispose of the product because it's not selling, because you found a defect, because the packaging wasn't right, because it hit its expiration date. And so it's really, really pays to have a measured approach. And again, if you buy in smaller batches, yes, it's more expensive per unit, but your cash is freed up and you can be a lot more iterative in it. So we did it this way. Okay, we got this feedback on the label. Next, we did it this way. Oh my God, it clumped up when we did that. Okay, we're going to change it. So like, we got to really do that when we don't get too ahead of ourselves and just imagine this like gigantic money savings opportunity.
Did you guys
Um,
do that with one of the products, and did you guys end up losing some money? You mind sharing some numbers with that?
yeah. One of our early days, we brought in this really big shipment in from India that ended up came in with a bug infestation for one reason or another, and we had to destroy it. And it was maybe $20,000 worth of product that we had to
Wow.
destroy. We have insurance too, although they have not been very helpful. But we've also had other products where we've had 1,000 units left or so, and it's coming up on its best buy date. And so we can't sell it at retail anymore. So we'll end up donating it or we'll end up dropping off at a discounter. And even now, like we have a lot of our packaging where we've updated our packaging. Like we updated our jars and exactly how they're, and we updated our lids, but we still have 10 or 20,000 units of the old style of packaging. And so we don't want to throw it out. It's still technically good. And so now we have this new packaging, we've had it for 6 months, and so like I think there's stuff like that when you overbuy. I've known so many companies and so many founders that could have even been the thing that drove them out of business, is a $10 or $20,000 write-off early in the company's life. It could really break your
Mm.
business. The second thing that I found that's been a costly mistake is that we at some point thought that discounting would lead to good customers. And so we do like marginal discounting, like buy more, save more and stuff like that. But I've known so many companies, and this could be true for other companies, but for us, it hasn't been the case, where if we think that if we can give you a really cheap first taste of our product, that you'll be back for more. And what we found is two things. One is that it kind of degrades the quality expectation that people have. People are like, oh, this is essentially a freebie. Like I don't want to pay full price for it. So it's hard to sell something to somebody for like $5 and be like, great, now do you want to pay $10 for it? And they're like, no, no, thank you. I'll wait for the next time that it's $5. And so it was really hard to support our like full cost value when we were it felt like we were undercutting ourselves. And then number two is that we found that the type of customer that came in was this like deal seeker customer. So I've seen companies that build it into their model that they just do a big sale every 3 months. And every 3 months, all the deal seeker customers come back. They feel like they're getting
Mm.
a good deal and all that stuff. It was not part of our model. And so when we started discounting to try to win customers, we got this whole host of deal seeker customers, and they didn't stick around when the prices went back up to full price. Instead, we've now mostly been focusing on like, this is a really incredible product and this is the price of it. And when you're ready, when you want to try it, you'll see that it's worth every penny, but we're not going to like come to your door, offering to give it to you for free just so that you'll give us a chance. So that hasn't worked well for us, and it's just not how our company's built. You don't see Apple going on sale. You don't see a lot of these like kind of. There's so many companies that really their whole point is protecting the margin and building like that.
And
Yeah.
when you
Go
guys
for it.
sold on a deal, like how much money do you think you guys have sacrificed in testing that, like
Yeah.
testing that strategy?
It's really easy. And by the way, I this is not about Prime Day. I think that like Prime Day people come in, even your best customers are ready for a deal. And
Yeah.
so we do want to definitely play in Prime Day and where all that happens. But we really like we lost thousands of dollars. Like we would just try to sell on a deal. We'd say, okay, great, we'll make this up later. And then we'd kind of be kind of at like cost break even, like COGS, cost of goods sold break even, but not at all the rest. So we would sell maybe 1,000 units like that. We would lose maybe $3,000, $4,000 in what would have otherwise been good revenue.
Mm,
And then we
yeah.
saw those customers just didn't stick around, or they came back at a way lower average order size. Like they just weren't our kind of like primo customers. So that was an experiment that cost us a few $1,000s that I would not like to repeat.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's a very good advice, or a lesson to learn from. And what is
I'll tell you
one?
a third one. Do you want a third one?
Yes.
A third one is underestimating customers' willingness to pay. And so, well, most of our lives on Amazon, we've had 3 packs and 6 packs, and same thing on our site. And now we've added both on Amazon and our site a 12 pack. On our site, we have a 36 pack, a 48 pack, and all of that. And we've actually seen that the bigger sets of spices have been more popular, which was counterintuitive for me. So again, this is maybe we've left maybe tens of thousands of dollars of revenue on the table with this, but we realize that people are shopping with some kind of budget in mind when they want to give a gift, when they want to buy something for themselves. And if you don't have a thing at their budget, they're going to go. And so we found that a lot of people are buying wedding gifts, our spices as wedding gifts, as birthday gifts, as housewarming gifts, or even for themselves, as just saying, hey, my spices are old and crappy. I want to replace the whole thing. And so we
Mm.
started seeing like that we were getting sales. We were able to sell $100 sets, $200, $400 sets of spices. We started seeing it cap out at around $600. And so we've seen that that's maybe a little too rich for people's blood. But we've seen a lot of success with that. And so this is not money that we directly lost, but this is like missed revenue opportunity that like I think we underestimated people's budgets for spices. And I don't know who's buying $500 sets of spices for their buddies for their housewarming, but they're there, and we were missing them, when we weren't offering that. So I
Wow.
really that took us to year 7 in the business to learn that one. So it took us a while, but now we finally figured it out.
Yeah, that's a pretty good thing to keep in mind, is that like don't underestimate how much people are willing to buy for gifts or creating sets. Is really important when you have a business, like test it out. I've heard a lot of stories of sellers who are like, oh, we increased our price because we were running out of inventory, so we wanted to increase our price so less people would buy, and they're like, our sales numbers went up when we increased the price. I'm
Ah,
like, wow, that's
totally. We're in
yeah.
the middle of a price sensitivity test right now where same thing with this product. Like we started it at like $12.99 on Amazon. It's now at kind of around 14, around 14.50. We're just kind of seeing the kind of what people are willing to pay. And that's something that's kind of really fun that I think is a lot easier to do on Amazon than on our e-commerce. So yeah, that's where we're really trying to focus on like what's the right, because also if we're able to make more money, then we're able to do bigger discounts on Prime Day, and we're able to kind of like build a better experience for customers. So we're trying to, all of our money gets reinvested back into the business. And so that price sensitivity is a really helpful and important thing. But I'll let you know maybe the next time we talk, I'll let you know where we landed on the price sensitivity analysis, because we're really trying. And by the way, that sounds like a super sophisticated thing. We're literally just increasing the prices of all of our products by $1 and seeing if
Yeah.
sales go down. And if they don't go down, then we'll increase it by another $1. And
Yeah.
just kind of see what the right price point is for that. And I think a lot of people, I mean, we literally started selling pouches of our spices for $5 a pouch. And we didn't have enough money for customer service and packaging and returns and all that stuff. And so as we've been increasing the prices, we're kind of stabilizing in the right level. And it's been really helpful for the business to be able to have more money to hire better people, pay the farmers more, package better, and keep reinvesting in the growth of our business.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be really curious to know how it ends up. Like, what do you end up landing on? Well, Ori, thank you so much for joining me today. This was really insightful, and congratulations on all the success. This has been a really cool journey that you've been on. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm looking forward to meeting again, and and hearing about all the success and how it all turns out.
Amazing. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me and letting me share about our social enterprise. That's a bootstrapped, funny business trying to build it up. But I'm telling you, we're on track to do close to $1 million on Amazon this year. And so, like I gave you one example of one spice. We've been building this out and implementing the strategy, and we're really getting more and more of space on Amazon to grow this. So I can't wait to give you the update. I can't wait to see how it all turns out. And thank you for having me and listening to my story.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you. Thank you.